President, I'm proud to stand in the gap. I'm proud to stand in this foxhole with my friends, my colleague, the Democrat whip from Illinois, Senator Durbin, and my friend, Senator Welch from Vermont. The Democrat whip is right. The Senate has to choose. Who are we going to listen to? Are we going to listen to Wall Street, or are we going to listen to the folks back home? Across Kansas, everyone is feeling the impacts of inflation. Family budgets are being stretched to the absolute limit with little room for error. So you can imagine the shock in Kansans' eyes when I tell them this year they will spend over $1,000 in hidden credit card swipe fees, which is really a tax. These fees, these swipe fees, are really just another additional tax. In this case, a 2 to 4% tax paid to Wall Street on top of every purchase you make. These fees are baked into nearly every purchase you make, whether it's your morning coffee, that Starbucks cup of coffee that you're paying $7, $8 for, you're going to send 2% more, 3%, 4% more to Wall Street. When you stop and fill up your gas tank, again, $50, $100 of gas, you're going to spend 2 or 3% sending that to Wall Street. School supplies, shopping, groceries. Every time you swipe your card, every time, the Visa MasterCard duopoly and Wall Street mega banks line their pockets. Madam President, I rise today with a clear message to Wall Street: enough is enough. And before we feel sorry for these multi-billion-dollar industries, I want to remind everyone that on top of the $100 billion, nearly $100 billion in fees Americans pay to Wall Street, these banks charge an average of 25% interest to consumers. The average consumer in America carries a balance of over $1,000 every month, 25% interest. Back home, we'd call that highway robbery. At a time when Kansans are facing the highest inflation prices in 40 years, small businesses are fighting to keep their losses and their costs low, while Wall Street plots their next payday, announcing, as the whip said, they're doubling down and hiking up their fees on merchants and consumers yet again this fall. Now, I, for one, am not going to stand for this massive, wealthy corporation price gouging small businesses at every turn. In fact, Madam President, as I speak, swipe fees here in America are a staggering 7 times higher than those in the European Union. Americans are paying 7 times more for this swipe fee than the folks in the European Union are. Now, that's not a trivial difference. That's a canyon-sized gap. Why should our small businesses, and by extension our consumers, bear such a disproportionate burden than our friends in the EU? Are payments 7 times more secure in America than the rest of the world? Of course not. Is the Visa MasterCard duopoly providing American consumers 7 times the value and customer service they provide their EU customers? Of course not. It's simple. They're exploiting our weakness. Due to this lack of competition in the payment processing industry, Visa and MasterCard are grabbing every penny they can from small businesses and consumers until this gets fixed. When I was first sworn in, my friend and mentor, the late, great Senator Bob Dole, gave me the best advice I could ever get. He said, listen to Kansans. When you have a concern, when you don't know what to do, go back home and listen to Kansans. And I'm sure my colleagues are hearing the same voices that I'm hearing back home. In August, I went to visit a little grocery store in Conway Springs. It was called Hired Man's Grocery and Grill. Hired Man's Grocery and Grill is run by a wonderful couple, Jenny and Clint, and their employees, for the most part, are high school students. They're the only grocery store in town, and that's why they opened it. They indeed were a desert, a food desert. They're the only ones in the community with fresh produce and butchered cuts of meat as well. Their products are crucial to the success of the town, and without their help, this community would have no grocery store. When I visited them, they shared with me their challenges. Inflation is raising prices for their businesses, and swipe fees are eating away at their profits. In fact, they're paying more in swipe fees than they do for utilities or employee health care. More in swipe fees than utilities or their employee health care. Now, back in Kansas, we have a saying: pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. Madam President, Visa and MasterCard have gotten hoggish on the back of hardworking Americans. I understand my colleagues from the great state of Illinois and Vermont and I have bullseyes on our backs, and those who support this legislation are being attacked by misleading ads. But I guess that just simply means we're over the target. But when we have legislation that will benefit every single person in Vermont, Illinois, Kansas, every American who uses a credit card, I'm moving full speed ahead. Now, just a couple weeks ago, Visa announced they plan to raise their swipe fees on merchants again. The problem is these mega banks have no guardrails. They can play fast and loose with your money because no one can stop them. Sadly, the credit card industry has been enriched by the COVID-19 pandemic that pushed us further into a cashless society. Inflation is impacting every corner of our country, putting the American dream further out of reach for millions. But not Visa. Listen to what the Visa CEO said. He even admitted that inflation has a positive impact for them. Inflation, Visa and MasterCard welcome the inflation. Why? Because these swipe fees are inflation multipliers. And Wall Street's the benefactor. I want to go back and talk about that little grocery store in rural Kansas. Jenny and Clint and other small businesses across the state have little to no wiggle room on their budgets. But the big banks press on, tightening the grip on similar mom-and-pop businesses across America. Wall Street doesn't care about my friends in Conway Springs, that they would lose their town's only grocery store, forcing everyone to drive 40 miles each way to get some milk, to get some food for their families. And while these financial titans may have their hands around the neck of merchants, I can promise you that leaders like Senator Durbin, Senator Welch, and myself, we're going to keep fighting for justice and doing the right thing. We will fight for our Main Street small businesses and choose hardworking Americans over Wall Street every single time. Look, the credit card market's broken, but we have a solution to fix it. The Credit Card Competition Act will level the playing field for merchants by injecting competition into the credit card payment industry. Not a price cap, but more competition, with the bank that issues the card picking the alternative interchange. And oh, by the way, financial institutions with a value of less than $100 billion are excluded from this legislation. Our legislation forces Visa and MasterCard to come to the table and compete with other companies in the industry. And in doing so, we will drive down the cost for merchants and consumers. Now, let me be clear, competition is always a good thing for consumers. Our Credit Card Competition Act will lower the cost of doing business for Jenny and Clint and their store in Conway Springs, and in turn, it's going to lower those bills for American consumers in the checkout lane. My message of hope to the merchants across the country is that help's on the way. We hope to be voting on our Credit Card Competition Act soon. And when that time comes, we hope other leaders in this Senate body will be willing to stand up to Wall Street and fight for hardworking families. I hope all our colleagues will listen, not only to the folks back home, but also to the thousands of your small businesses who are pleading for relief. And please, choose those voices over Wall Street. Thank you, Madam President. I yield back.